I've been asked to do a discussion on inflation, what our views on inflation are. The first thing is everybody wants to put the correct air in the tire, but nobody knows what the correct air is. In my view, the correct air for a tire is the air we have in Des Moines, Iowa during the summer.
Okay.
During the winter, yeah, Key West, Florida.
Key West, Florida.
Okay, no. They're really talking about pressure, PSI. How much pressure should be in the tire? Now, if we look at the sidewall of the tire,
right.
Now let's skip that. Let's back up. What do you normally find in steer and drive tires for pressure?
100 pounds on the steer and 100 pounds in your drive.
And that's the most common traditional inflation we've seen all over the place. Every place I go, put 100 and 100.
Okay, that's normal, right?
That's normal.
Is it correct?
Well, let's discuss what is correct.
What's correct?
If we look at the sidewall of that steer tire, it will say on a 295/75 R22.5 load range G tire. That's a lot of description, but that's a fairly standard highway tire. It says on the sidewall, max load, 6,175 pounds at 110 PSI cold.
Right.
Okay. Now the question I always ask everybody is the 110 that's listed after that, is that the maximum pressure that's allowed in the tire? Or is that the minimum pressure you should have for the load?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's the maximum pressure.
And that's what I typically get out of everybody, says it's the max pressure. In fact, it's the minimum pressure.
The minimum pressure.
To carry that load.
Okay. Where did they get the idea that that was the max pressure?
You mean the 110?
Right.
In the car market, if you look at a sidewall, it will say max load and max inflation.
Okay.
But the truck tires aren't the same.
Yeah, at the end of it, it says this tire carries 35 pounds max pressure.
Correct.
And okay, but that's a car tire.
It's a car tire.
Not a truck tire.
No, we're talking about truck tires.
They say max pressure.
They do not. They say max load at this inflation.
At this inflation.
Okay?
Well, then they're making some assumptions.
We all make assumptions every day, but
okay.
That's true. All right, now let's look at what the tire is doing.
Okay.
If you get a tire inflation chart, and one should be appearing over us pretty soon here, and
all over us.
All over us, hiding the face. It's a good thing. And you go to a 295/75 R22.5 tire, it will show a line across for single tire, and it'll show another line across for duals. Now let's talk about what weight is being carried on a standard highway truck tire.
Okay.
If you look at the two steer tires on a standard highway tractor, fully loaded, how much weight are they carrying?
Around 6.
Correct. Generally, with the setback front axles, we're finding they're creeping up to 6.2 and 6.5, so they're pushing a little bit. But about 6,000 pounds.
Yep.
If you look at the drive tires, the drive tires in a pair of drive axles are carrying 34,000 pounds.
Right.
The trailer tires in a pair of trailer tires are typically carrying 34,000 pounds.
Okay.
So you add 34 and 34 and 12, and you get 80,000 pounds, and that's a full loaded truck. There are two drive axles under the truck. So each axle is carrying 17,000 pounds. There are 4 tires on the axle.
Okay.
4 into 17,000 pounds means each tire is carrying about 4,250 pounds of load.
Right. My math is pretty good. I think that's right.
If you look at that tire inflation chart and you go to the dual line and you find 4,250 pounds of load and go up and find out what the minimum cold inflation is,
right,
you'll find it's 65 pounds.
65 pounds in a drive or
trailer
tire.
Correct.
Is correct pressure
for that load
at a certain speed.
Well, we haven't gotten into that yet.
Okay.
Let's leave that alone. Okay? Now, most charts that I find don't go to 4,250, they'll go to 4,500.
Okay.
And they'll tell you 70 pounds.
70 pounds. So it's somewhere below that.
So you'd have to extrapolate down another 5 pounds to get to that load.
Or just quit. Let's say it's supposed to be 70. Still, point is, it's well below 100.
Correct. Now, anybody who's been in the business and dealt with tire inflations on trucks and trailers, any amount of time, you can ask them, what do you think would happen to your driving trailer tires if you ran 70 pounds of air in them?
Don't even have to think about it.
They'd go to pieces.
Yeah.
They wouldn't last. We know from experience, 40 years of experience, that those driving trailer tires are better off overinflated by a factor of 40 or 50%.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's look at the steer tire.
Okay.
The steer tires are each carrying about 6,000 pounds.
We'd already determined that.
And if you look at that inflation chart on a single tire, you'll see that that load range G tire, inflated to 110 psi, can carry 6,000 pounds of load. But that's not the maximum pressure, it's the minimum to carry the load, just like the 70 pounds was the minimum for the drive and trailer tires.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. All right. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
What happens to a tire when you run it underinflated or overinflated?
What? Okay. Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if it's underinflated, you start wearing out the middle of the tire, and usually in a patchy way.
Well, that's a low rolling resistance tire.
Okay.
If we look at a conventional tire,
Okay.
we tend to expect them to wear in the shoulders.
Right on the shoulders. Okay.
If they're overinflated, we expect them to wear in the middle
Okay.
because they're ballooning the tire out and it'll wear in the middle.
Carrying more weight right there.
Correct. Now, my question to you is, on the drive and trailer tires that you've seen that are running at 100 psi instead of 70,
Don't see that wear at all.
they don't, which means it's a wives' tale.
They were just fine.
They were fine. They were flat. They were square. They were beautiful.
Okay.
Okay? If you underinflate a tire with a normal, regular tire, we expect to see shoulder wear because the weight comes down through the shoulder of the tire. And unless there's enough inflation to keep everything flat on the ground, you're going to carry more weight on the shoulders and they're going to wear faster.
Right.
So if you're running tires at 100 psi, which is 10% underinflated,
Right.
you can expect to see shoulder wear. And we do frequently see it.
With it. Yes.
Okay? You've got the same tire, basic casing, a 295/75 load range G tire, on the steer, and you wear out the tread and you eventually put it on the rear. So it's really the same tire, right?
Right.
But the steer tire individually is carrying 50% more weight than an individual rear tire is.
That's right.
Rear's carrying about 4,000, steer's carrying about 6,000. But we're running the same inflation in both of them.
Right.
How can that be correct?
Honestly, it's not correct.
It can't be correct, and it's not incorrect according to the inflation tables. But it's a convenient way to inflate tires.
Right. Right.
When we run that way, we tend to have more irregular wear in the steer tires than we do in the rears.
Okay. Yeah. Now, why, if you've got an underinflation problem in the steer and an overinflation problem in the drive, how can you have more problems in the steer than the drive?
Because underinflation is a bigger problem than overinflation.
Okay, you're going to have to explain it.
We've got another graph. If you run a tire 20% overinflated,
Okay.
it will cost you about 8% of the tire's life.
Okay.
If you run a tire 20% underinflated, it'll cost you 20% of the tire's life.
Okay. That's the problem. The problem is overinflation doesn't cost you as much as underinflation.
Exactly. Now, if you could get them perfect and keep them perfect, I'd buy that.
Okay.
But it doesn't happen.
And it is a dance, isn't it? Trying to find exactly the right pressure for that tire, for that load, for that speed, for that.
Yes. Yes. Now, let's talk about cold inflation, because that's what it says on the side of the tire.
That's
Cold.
What is cold?
Ambient temperature. Normal room temperature.
Room temperature.
Okay?
Okay. Now, is it room temperature in northern Minnesota in December, or is it room temperature in Phoenix in July?
Well, if you're operating in a cold environment, it's the temperature outside.
The temperature outside.
Correct.
Whatever the temperature.
That is the ambient temperature.
Okay.
If you're airing up a tire inside in 60-degree temperatures,
60. Okay.
and then you back it outside where it's 20 below zero, the cold will contract the air and you'll automatically lose a whole lot of inflation. And there's a chart for that too.
Right.
So if you're airing up inside in a controlled temperature and then backing out in the cold, you're supposed to make an adjustment for that difference.
You make an adjustment. Okay.
Okay, but let's look at the other direction. Tires gain heat because of operation.
That's supposed to be true. Yep.
It is true. And the heat is gained in the flex of the sidewall. It's not the friction on the road on the tire. It's the sidewall flex.
That motor.
It's like bending a coat hanger and then grabbing it, it'll get hot.
Okay.
Okay?
I know that. Yep.
We control how much bend and how much heat through 4 factors. 1, how much load you got on it? 6,000 pounds.
Right.
2, what's the inflation? 110, that tells me how stiff the sidewall will be.
So that's what the inflation is doing, is stiffening the sidewall.
To reduce the flex.
The inflation isn't simply adding pressure, it is specifically stiffening the sidewall.
Correct. Okay? Number 3, what's the speed you're driving at? And commercial highway truck tires are normally rated for speed for temperature at 70 miles an hour.
Okay.
That tells me how many times per minute that sidewall will flex and how much heat it'll build.
Okay.
The 4th factor is the outside temperature, and the standard temperature for this heat generation factor is 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you combine 6,000 pounds of load, 110 psi, 70 miles an hour, 60 degrees outside temperature, we expect the tire to gain 15% inflation.
Okay. 15% over 110 being
125, 128.
Yeah.
That would be what we would expect the tire to have in pressure when it's hot.
When it's hot, we have 125, 120. Okay.
And how long does it take to cool down? 2 hours.
Okay.
In the shade.
In the shade. Okay.
If you're in Arizona in the summer, the sunny side tires aren't going to cool as fast.
Or at all,
Maybe.
perhaps.
Okay, so we'll deal with this basic fact. What happens if we change a variable? What if we don't drive at 70 miles an hour?
Okay.
Now you're going to change the heat generation.
True.
So if you drive faster than 70 miles an hour, you're going to generate more heat. Your tire's going to overinflate.
Okay.
So what do you think we should do to the inflation, knowing we're going to drive fast?
Well, you should lower the pressure.
If we lower the pressure, we increase the flex and we increase the heat buildup.
It will increase
Temperature.
overall temperature and overall inflation because you decrease the cold inflation.
And when you overheat the tire, it starts coming apart like chicken off a bone.
Yeah, we don't want to do that either.
So according to the chart, and it should be showing up shortly, you should add pressure and decrease the load on the tire. You have to do both.
If you're going to drive faster.
Correct.
If you're going to drive faster, add pressure, decrease load.
And how many people that are driving 75, 80 miles an hour have added pressure to the tire and taken 12% of the load off?
Not a one.
So now they're underinflated and overloaded, and they wonder why they got a tire wear problem.
Right. And they're lucky. They just got a tire wear problem.
Let's go the other direction.
Okay.
What if you're driving slow?
Driving slower. Then you should also decrease pressure.
No, you add air. Because you won't get hot enough to get to the correct operating pressure.
Okay. Wait a minute. You're going to get too hot, you're not going to get hot enough, and in both cases you add air?
Correct. The other interesting thing is if you go slow enough, you not only add air, but you can carry more load.
Well, that's good.
Because the max load listed on the tire is at an assumed 70 miles an hour, not 30 miles an hour. You drive something at 30 miles an hour, you can carry 60% more load on that tire.
Okay.
Okay? So it's not even the max load, is it?
No, really. Okay, so it's not the max load for the tire.
No.
Because of the speed.
It's the max load at that expected speed.
With that expected inflation.
Okay, now let's go another direction. What if we change temperatures? Instead of driving in a 60-degree temperature and the cold air going by the tire is taking heat off.
Cool air. It's not cold.
It's cool.
All right.
Now we're driving in 100-degree temperatures.
100.
What's going to happen to the pressure in the tire when it gets hot?
The tire pressure is going to go up.
Correct. And it's going to overinflate the tire.
Okay.
So what do you think the tire manufacturers recommend you do when you're operating in a hot environment? Add air, take air out.
Well, based on our speed discussion, I'm going to say take air out.
Nope, because that increases the flex in the sidewall, which increases the temperature, which starts deteriorating the tire. No, they want you to add air.
Add air if it's hot out.
5 pounds for every 20 degrees of temperature rise over the 60.
5 for every 20. So if it's 80 degrees out, you add 5. If it's a normal 80-degree day, which it was a lot this year, then you add 5 pounds.
So your normal pressure is now 115.
115 normal pressure.
If it's 100, your normal pressure is 120.
Right.
Now, what's the limit on how much air you can put in this steer tire? We know the driving trailer tires have been run 50% overinflated. Do we want to go 50% over in a steer tire?
Well, the only number I saw was 110.
110 on the tire.
Right.
On the rim, for a load range G tire, they're only rated for 120 cold. That's the maximum cold inflation for the rim.
Okay, cold.
Yes.
All right.
It'll go higher when it's hot, and they know that. But they don't want you starting out at 130 on that rim. The rim will collapse.
Okay.
Okay? So the limit is not the tire's ability to put up with pressure. The limit is the rim's ability to put up with pressure.
120.
Do you know how much pressure it would take if I just kept the air on there and kept building it up to blow the tire off the rim?
No, I do not.
350 psi.
I just don't have a pump that goes that.
Nobody does, but that would be the limit because they've tested it at the factories.
Okay.
And a truck, steel, belted, and cabled tire takes 350 pounds to blow it off the rim.
Okay.
All right? And I'm not asking you to go to 350. Don't. But an extra 5 or 10 pounds will solve a lot of problems. Now, we've said that if you're going to drive in a slow speed, you should add some air. If you're going to drive in a fast speed, you should add some air and take some load off. If you're going to drive in a hot environment, you want to add air. What if you're driving at 0 degrees? What's going to happen to the temperature in your tire?
It isn't going to increase as fast.
Or at all.
Or at all.
Depends on how cold it is.
Could be.
So what do you think they want us to do to the inflation in the tire when it's cold? Add it or take it out?
You gotta take air out.
No, you got to add it.
You gotta add air. Every single time you're gonna add.
I have never found a single recommendation from a tire manufacturer to take air out.
They always say add air.
Add air.
Well, what's the result? I mean,
well, what's the result of running your driving trailer tires 50% overinflated?
no bad tire wear.
And you do it in summer and in winter and at low speeds and at high speeds. You run 50% overinflated.
All the time.
18 tires on the truck are there. 16 of them are overinflated and 2 of them aren't. Which ones give you more tire wear problems?
Well, it's got to be those inside edges of those trailer tires.
No, it's the steers.
Okay.
It's the steers, and we need more air, and that's the first thing.
Okay.
Now, let me give you one more factor. If I aired up a tire today to 110 psi, put it in this air-conditioned room, and left it here for 30 days in a constant temperature, nobody messed with it, and I came back and checked the inflation at the end of 30 days, would you expect it to have more air or less air after 30 days of sitting?
Depends on the phase of the moon.
No, it depends on nothing. It'll have less.
Okay.
Tires leak. They leak air right through the sidewalls because the rubber tire is not a solid. It's porous, and air can percolate out of it. We expect a commercial truck tire to lose between 3 and 5 pounds a month. So if 110 is the minimum inflation that tire is supposed to have, are you better off starting at 110 and leaking down to 105 and then putting it back? Or are you better off starting at 115 and leaking down to 110?
Well, I'm going to go with more air.
More air. Everything I've said is more air.
I'm not going to start with low again.
I would prefer to see you starting at 115. We find that is the best average number. Unless I'm running in a real cold environment, then I'll go to 120. Or a real hot environment, then I'll go to 120. And the only limitation is the rim. Right. Now, this discussion was for a load range G tire. If you have a load range H tire that can carry 7,000 pounds, it has a minimum sidewall inflation of 120. You should have a load range G rim to go with it. You can't just upgrade the tire without upgrading the rim.
H rim.
Load range H rim.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. You have to upgrade the rim and the tire at the same time.
Right.
Because the load range H rim has a maximum cold inflation of 130.
Okay.
Now they're compatible. Now you can run that slight over inflation and you get better tire life. All in all, everything I've seen in all the years I've been in this is that one of the contributing factors to irregular wear in a steer tire is chronic and habitual underinflation. Thank you very much.